My sister inherited everything, and I had to steal to eat. I 28F grew up in what most people would have called a good family. Dad was a high school principal, mom was a nurse, and we had this nice little brick house in the suburbs of Portland. I have an older sister, Claire 31F, who if you asked anyone back then was the perfect daughter. And I guess I didn't mind that, at least not when I was a kid. Claire got straight A's, played cello, was homecoming queen. I was quieter. Not dumb, not a troublemaker, just more introverted. I liked books, drawing, sitting under trees with my dog. I didn't compete with Claire because I always assumed there was no point. Our parents weren't mean, not in the way you'd think of as abusive. We had family dinners, took camping trips to the coast, hosted birthday parties with cake and folding chairs and cousins. But something always felt a little off, even though I didn't have the words for it back then. Like my mom never really saw me unless I was doing something that made her look good. When I came second in a middle school art contest, she barely said a word. When Claire got a B+ once, mom took her out for ice cream to cheer her up. I think that's when I started noticing little things. At Christmas, Claire got the real presents, jewelry, new phone, concert tickets. I got clothes 2 sizes too big, sometimes still in the clearance bag. If I ever said anything, mom would make a joke like, "Well, you're the practical one." Or Claire just really needed a win this year. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was just different, less needy maybe. After high school, Claire got into Stanford. My parents threw a backyard party that probably cost more than my entire college tuition. I remember standing there with a red Solo cup, watching her cut this massive cake with "Congratulations, Claire" in gold icing. There were no such celebrations when I got into a state school 2 years later. I took a Greyhound to campus with 2 duffel bags. Dad helped carry them into my dorm, said, "Text your mom," and left. Still, I told myself I was lucky, that some people didn't even get that. After college, I floated. I worked in bookstores, taught art to kids at a community center. I liked it even if it barely paid rent. Meanwhile, Claire was already living in San Francisco, working for some tech company, wearing blazers and talking about equity packages over FaceTime. Every time we called, mom would interrupt and say things like, "Claire, tell her about your bonus. Isn't that amazing?" But then dad got sick. It was a weird kind of cancer. Rare, fast. It hit just before the pandemic, so we were all kind of spiraling already. I came home to help out, moved into the basement for what I thought would be a few months. I stayed a year and a half, drove dad to chemo, cooked dinner when mom couldn't, helped him shower when it got bad. Claire flew in twice, once for a weekend, once for 3 days when things got really bad. But even then, she stayed at a hotel. I don't hold that against her, not really. Not everyone can handle death. But after he passed, things changed, for real this time. At the reading of the will, it was me, Claire, mom, and some lawyer who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I remember the cheap fluorescent lights, the smell of carpet cleaner. I wasn't expecting much, dad didn't have a ton, and whatever there was, I assumed it'd go to mom. But then the lawyer said something that didn't compute. Claire was inheriting the house, the car, the life insurance policy, the savings account, about $86,000, and me. I got his watch, an old scratched-up Seiko he barely wore. I didn't even say anything at first, I just sat there. I kept waiting for someone, mom, Claire, the lawyer, to say it was a mistake, that there'd been an addendum or that I'd missed something, but nothing came. Claire looked at me and said, with this fake sad tone, "Dad knew you never cared about money." I laughed right there in the office, just a short, dry sound. Because yeah, I never cared about money, but maybe that's because I never had any. We went home and I tried to let it go. Really, I did. I told myself again and again, it's just money, you have your own life, let it be. But things got harder after that. Rent in Portland shot up. The center where I taught kids closed. I started picking up hours at a cafe, then delivering groceries at night. There was 1 month where I had to choose between electricity and groceries. I chose groceries, then stole tampons from the pharmacy and cried in my car. That's when it started to unravel. One night, mom called, it was late. She sounded a little drunk, which wasn't super common for her. She said, "I feel bad about your birthday." I said, "Which one?" She went quiet. Then she mumbled something. I didn't catch all of it, but it sounded like, "You never were supposed to notice." I asked her what she meant. She hung up. That next week, I went over to the house to get some boxes dad had kept in the garage, old drawings, some letters I'd written him. Mom wasn't home. I found the boxes, but I also found something else. A folder in the filing cabinet he used to keep locked. Inside were bank statements, lots of them, some going back 20 years, and what I found made my stomach flip. Every month from the time I was 12, there were transfers from a joint account, one I'd never seen before, into an account in Claire's name. Thousands of dollars, regularly. There was a note on one, Claire's monthly tax-free gift. By the time she turned 25, she'd gotten over $200,000. I got nothing. I sat down on the garage floor and just stared at it all. For hours, I felt like I was floating, like the world had bent in a direction I'd always sensed but never quite seen. I texted Claire, she didn't respond. I called Mom, she answered on the second ring. "Did you know?" I asked. My voice sounded small even to me. There was a pause, then she said, "Your father had his reasons." And that was it, no apology, no denial, just that. When I pressed her, really pressed her, she finally snapped and said, "Claire needed stability. You were always independent, you never asked for anything." That's when I exploded. For the first time in my life, I let it all out. Every forgotten birthday, every brushed off achievement, every time I cried in secret because I thought I just wasn't enough. Mom didn't cry, she didn't yell, she just said, "Well, what do you want me to do now?" And I had no answer. So I left. I didn't go back for a while after that. Not for Sunday dinners, not for holidays, not even when Claire got engaged and sent a group text with a blurry ring photo and the caption, "He finally did it," with 4 heart emojis. I didn't reply. No one followed up. At first, the silence was loud, deafening, really. I'd wake up and check my phone automatically, expecting a text from Mom or even just a passive-aggressive thumbs up to one of my social media posts. But nothing came. And in that vacuum, I started to feel things I'd buried for years. Resentment, sure, but also guilt. This insidious kind of guilt I couldn't place, like I'd done something wrong just by not being grateful enough. I kept replaying all those moments when I'd made excuses for them, when I told myself they loved me just differently. The truth, they didn't know me, not really, and I wasn't sure they ever wanted to. About a month later, I ran into my Aunt Julie at the farmer's market. She's my dad's younger sister, kind of a black sheep of the family, always wore loud earrings and called everyone kid. She pulled me into a tight hug before I could even think of turning away. We sat at a picnic bench and split a cinnamon roll, and out of nowhere she said, "You know your dad wasn't always like that." I blinked, like what? Careful, closed off, always chasing Claire's approval like it was a full-time job. I hadn't said anything about what happened, not yet, but she just knew. Julie had always been the one person who saw through the act. She told me things I hadn't known, like how, after Claire was born, Mom had 2 miscarriages. I was the surprise baby. My parents had already started building a life around just one golden child, and I came along and disrupted the plan. I asked her why they never told me. She looked at me for a long time and said, "I think they were ashamed, not of you, of what they did with that shame." That night, I pulled out a box of old journals I hadn't touched in years. Some entries were from when I was 9, 10, full of cartoon doodles and ramblings about my dog Max. Others were darker, teenage years, pages of wondering why I felt invisible, what I'd done to deserve being second best. And even now, at 28, living alone in a tiny studio apartment that still smelled like the last tenant's curry obsession, I realized I hadn't grown out of that hurt. I just adapted around it. Then came the email. "Claire. Subject line, can we talk?" It wasn't long, just a few lines. "Hey, I know you're pissed. Mom told me you found the account. I want to explain, I didn't ask for any of it. I didn't know until college. Dad just said it was for my future. I assumed you got the same. I didn't know you didn't. Please, let's talk." See? I stared at it for hours, typed out 4 different replies, deleted them all. Eventually, I just wrote, "I'm not ready." And that was true, I was. I needed space, not just from them, but from the version of myself who'd spent so long trying to earn scraps of affection. I started seeing a therapist. Her name's Mara, and during our second session, I told her, "I don't think my family loved me in the way people should be loved." She nodded and said, "But you still think it was your fault." I started crying and couldn't stop. The thing about being the resilient one is that people stop checking if you're okay. They assume you'll land on your feet because you always have. But no one asks what it costs to keep landing. Eventually, I agreed to meet Claire. We picked a neutral spot, a park we used to go to as kids, the one with the weird metal elephant slide that always burned your thighs in summer. She brought iced coffee and a blanket. I brought a stomach full of knots. She looked older, not in a bad way, just tired, like adulthood had finally caught up to her. She gave me a tight smile when I didn't return. The first few minutes were awkward. Small talk, work, the weather. Then she sighed and said, "Look, I don't expect forgiveness, I honestly didn't know." I believed her. I hated that I did, but I did. She told me that Dad had always pressured her to succeed, that when she got her first C in high school, he didn't speak to her for 2 days, that he'd make comments about her representing the family, that the money had felt less like a gift and more like a contract she never got to read. I was the favorite, she said, but I was also trapped in their idea of me. I looked at her and said, "At least you got a version." She nodded slowly, "I know." We sat in silence for a long time, then she said something I didn't expect. I gave it back. "What?" "The money, not all of it, some of it went to loans, taxes. But the rest, the house, the car, the savings, I transferred it to Mom, told her I didn't want it." I didn't know how to feel, relief, anger, gratitude, maybe all of them. "Why?" I asked. She looked at me and for the first time really looked like she saw me, not just the idea of me. "Because it was never fair," she said, "and I don't want to keep pretending it was." That didn't fix things, not magically, but it mattered. Mom, on the other hand, didn't take it well. She called me a month later and said, "I hope you're happy. You've turned your sister against me now." I said, "No, you did that yourself." Then I blocked her number. We haven't spoken since. I still think about Dad. A lot. I go back and forth between missing him and feeling betrayed. I remember the nights I read to him during chemo, the way he'd squeeze my hand when he was in pain. I also remember him looking me in the eye for 20 years and letting me believe we were equals in his heart. I don't know which version of him is true. Maybe both. But I do know this, I'm not the invisible daughter anymore. I'm not the one who sits quietly while everyone else tells a story I'm not in. I'm writing my own now. And even if it's messy and small and not full of perfect choices, it's mine. I wish I could say that cutting off contact with Mom gave me instant peace like those self-help blogs say. But grief doesn't work that way. It's not clean. It's jagged, like stepping on broken glass in the dark. You feel fine until suddenly you're bleeding and you don't even know where the pain started. Some days I wake up and miss her. Not the real her, necessarily, but the idea of her. The mom I wanted her to be. The one who would text me recipes or ask how work was going without immediately pivoting the conversation to Claire. I miss that version of her like someone might miss a home they never lived in but always imagined, with warm light and the smell of soup on the stove. And Claire, well, we talk more now. Kind of awkwardly, like two people learning a language they used to speak fluently as kids but forgot somewhere along the way. She invited me to her wedding and I said I'd think about it. She didn't push, just said, "Whatever you decide, I get it." That meant more to me than any apology. In the meantime, I've been trying to rebuild my life from the inside out. I started freelancing as an illustrator again. At first, it was just commissions from Reddit and a few friends of friends, but it's grown. I'm not rich, not even close, but for the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm drowning. I can buy groceries without panic. I can pay rent on time. I can breathe. I also started volunteering at a youth center, teaching art to kids who remind me so much of myself it hurts. Quiet ones, weird ones, the ones who sit in the corner and think no one notices. I make sure they know I see them. One kid, Josh, 12, always stays after class. He told me once, "I like coming here because it's the only place nobody yells." I looked at him and said, "You deserve that, peace I mean." And as I said it, I realized I meant it for myself too. I'm not angry every day now. Some days, yes. Some nights I still dream about family dinners where no one passes me the mashed potatoes or holidays where I forget my name. But I also dream about walking on the beach alone, just me and the wind and the sound of the waves, and I wake up feeling calm. There was this one moment a few weeks ago that felt like something cracking open. I was at the house, the old one. Claire had convinced Mom to put it up for sale, and we were there packing things. I hadn't seen Mom in months, and she mostly avoided me in the rooms, pretending to be busy. But in the attic, I found something weird, a shoebox tucked behind some dusty plastic bins. Inside were letters, dozens of them addressed to me, all in my dad's handwriting. They weren't sent. Most were dated between the years I was 14 and 22. I read them all on the floor, sitting cross-legged in my old hoodie like I was 16 again. He wrote about everything: his fears, his regrets, his confusion over how to be a father to two such different daughters. One letter said, "You always seemed like you didn't need me, and I took that as a reason to focus on Claire. I see now that was wrong." Another said, "I'm proud of you even if I don't say it out loud. Your art blows me away. I brag about you, to the guys at work, but I don't think you believe me." The last one, dated the year he got diagnosed, said, "If you find these, I hope it's because you're ready to know how much I loved you. I didn't show it right. I failed at that. But I never stopped loving you, not for a second." I sat there sobbing like a child, sobbing so hard my chest hurt, the kind of crying that empties you. Eventually, I stood up, wiped my face, and took the box with me. I didn't tell Mom I found it. I don't know if she knew about the letters. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't care. Either way, they're mine now. That box didn't fix everything, but it gave me something I didn't realize I still needed: proof that I mattered. That somewhere inside the man who had always stood on the other side of Claire's spotlight, there had been a version of him who saw me. Maybe too late, but he saw me. Claire called last night. We talked for an hour. No big revelations, no tears, just two women talking about life and recipes and this dumb reality show we both secretly love. Before we hung up, she said, I think about Dad a lot. I think he was scared of you because you didn't play the game." I said I didn't know there was a game. She said, "Exactly. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know if I'll ever reconcile with Mom or if I even want to. I don't know if I'll go to the wedding or if Claire and I will stay close or drift again. But I do know that I've stopped pretending. And that might be the biggest thing. I've stopped pretending I was fine, that it didn't hurt, that I didn't want to be loved the way Claire was. I've stopped pretending my family was whole. It was. But I am working on making myself whole. Piece by piece. I'm not there yet, but I'm closer. And for now, that's enough. It's been about a year now since that afternoon in the attic, since I found the letters and felt something quietly click into place. Not a perfect ending, not forgiveness exactly, but something like understanding, or maybe just the beginning of it. Claire got married, I didn't go. I told her in advance and she understood. I didn't make up a reason or lie, I just said, "I love you, but I can't be in that room, not with her, not yet." She paused for a moment and then said, "Thank you for not making up some excuse." The night of the wedding, I took myself out to a little Italian place with twinkle lights on the patio. Ordered wine, lasagna, and tiramisu, even though it was overpriced and I had rent due in a week. I brought one of Dad's letters in my bag, the one where he talked about how brave he thought I was for moving out at 19. I reread it over dinner. It felt like he was there in some impossible, bittersweet way. Sometimes I wonder if Dad ever intended for me to find those letters. If he had told himself he'd send them someday and just never got the courage. Or if they were always meant to be a secret, his quiet penance in a cardboard box. I'll never know, and weirdly I'm okay with that. Mom still hasn't reached out. She sold the house after the wedding. Claire told me she moved into a condo near the water, joined a book club, started taking pottery classes. Sometimes I imagine running into her at a cafe, some accidental confrontation where I say something devastating and she finally cracks open and apologizes. But life's not a movie, the apology might never come. And if I'm honest, I don't need it the way I used to. I used to picture it constantly, this perfect monologue where she breaks down crying and tells me she was wrong, that she's proud of me, that she's sorry for every time she looked through me like I wasn't there. Now I think maybe she can't say those things. Maybe it would destroy her to admit she failed at loving one of her children the way they needed. Maybe she'll go to her grave believing she did her best. Maybe she did do her best, and maybe that best just wasn't enough for me. That's something I still struggle with, holding two truths at once. That someone can mean well and still do harm. That a parent can love you and still fail you. That I can love my family and still choose to keep them at a distance. Mara, my therapist, calls it living in the gray. I used to hate it. I wanted answers, clarity, a villain and a victim. Now I think there's something honest about the mess of it all. There was a moment last week, late at night, when I was sketching out a concept for a children's book I've been slowly, painfully working on. It's about a little girl who lives in a lighthouse but doesn't know what the light is for. She just thinks it's pretty. Until one day, a ship crashes on the rocks, and she realizes the light was supposed to warn people, not just shine. It hit me out of nowhere what the story was actually about. It's not just about the girl, it's about the generations that built the lighthouse without ever explaining the purpose. About how sometimes the tools we're given, love, money, family, only make sense after the wreckage. I cried again, but softer this time, like something inside me was finally starting to let go. I don't talk about my family much with new people. It's not a secret, but it's not a story I share on first dates or in job interviews. It's something sacred now, like scar tissue not visible to everyone, but a part of my skin all the same. There's a guy I've been seeing. His name, Daniel. He's quiet, kind. The kind of man who remembers how you take your coffee and never asks why you flinch when someone raises their voice. I haven't told him everything yet. I will, eventually. But for now, it feels good to just exist with someone without explaining myself. Sometimes I think about having kids, not in the immediate pick-out-name sense, but in that quiet, terrifying way where you wonder if you'll be different, if you'll be better, if you'll mess them up in new, smaller ways. I think I would try really hard. I think I'd listen. And I think that maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. I'm still healing, still learning how to hold space for myself. Still working on not shrinking every time someone else needs more room, but I'm also laughing more, sleeping better, painting again, not just for work, but for myself. And I've started writing letters too. To myself. They're in a box under my bed, labeled for when you forget. Inside are things like, you are not a burden. Your worth isn't measured by how easy you are to love. You don't have to explain your pain to deserve compassion. You get to choose your own family. I think Dad would have understood. And if not, well, that's okay too. He was just a man in the end, flawed, scared, trying like me, like all of us. If you've read this far, thank you. Really. I didn't expect this to turn into such a long post, but maybe that's what happens when you've held a story inside for years and finally let it out. I don't have a neat conclusion. Just this. I was invisible once. Now I'm not. And that, I think, is the real inheritance I've given myself. Thank you for staying with me through the whole story. This wasn't something I ever imagined putting into words, not like this, not for strangers, but writing it has been healing in a way I didn't expect, like letting go of something I didn't know I was still carrying. I guess if there's a final to this, it's not about what happened, it's about what I've learned. That silence is a kind of inheritance too, and breaking it is a form of rebellion. That love, real love, isn't about fairness or performance. It's about being seen and choosing to see others back even when it's hard. That grief doesn't always come in waves. Sometimes it's in the small, quiet moments, the space after a phone call, the pause in a sentence where someone used to be. That growing up means realizing the people you trusted to have all the answers were just people, doing their best, and sometimes their best didn't include understanding you. But maybe the most important thing I've learned is this. You can outgrow a story, even one you were born into. Even one where you were the afterthought, the invisible sibling, the spare. You can write something new, you can build your own lighthouse. You can choose who you become and how you love and where you go next. I'm still figuring it out, still rewriting things in pencil, but I'm here. And I'm not pretending anymore. That's something I never thought I'd be able to say. So thank you if you've ever felt like the forgotten one, the overlooked, the outsider. You're not alone. We see each other now. And that counts for something. Always.